Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. And I think on the next slide, you will see that this is me. I'm introducing myself. My name is Christian Schmel, as announced. I'm working in the software industry, started in 1998. That's been a while since then. You see, I lost some hair meanwhile. And I started for a company called Aitido. Some of you may know them, and that was my entrance into technical illustration software development. And I'm now at Corel since beginning of 2018. So yeah, that's more than 4 years right now. And I'm located in Germany near Cologne. I'm working full-time home office here with my colleagues all over the world. The developers of Corel or Eludo, as we see later, are located in Canada. And that's really good. So I can work on my German stuff here. And then later on, when these guys wake up, I can continue with those. So myself, I'm mechanical engineer and trained technical illustrator, and studied some years airbrush design and stuff. So actually, I'm working for something that I like, and that's the perfect combination. So it's a work-life balance per se for me. And my role at Corel is I recently switched my role. I was in 100% product management for the CorelDRAW Technica Suite. And since there was heavy involvement with demos, presentations, talking to prospects, figuring out what their use cases are, I switched to the sales department, and now I'm doing both. So I'm collecting all the feature requests. I have a look on the market, what is needed, and input this into the software to further development. And yeah, if somebody's asking for prices, I can send a quote, and that's the perfect combination. As you can see, I love it, and it's really fun. So that photo that you see has been taken, I think, last Monday. I just tonight came back from the IPS user conference, user forum in Vienna, where it was all about S1000D, where we are also very involved, and where specific requirements for illustrations are there. And I had some really nice contacts, and I'm currently catching up with all those, and it was really fruitful there, and I'm looking forward to the next conference that we have in this era. So first of all, in between, before we go ahead with this, there might be some confusion, or it might be not there. So the company Corel is, that's a wide word. So people and users and everybody tend to use, I'm working with Corel. So that's actually the company name. And when you're working with Corel, you're actually working with Corel Draw or Corel Designer or whatever. So that's a wide term. By the way, the name Corel is the abbreviation of Copeland Research Laboratory, and so it's an artificial combination. And since we are revamping a lot of stuff, and there's a lot movement in the company, we have new leaders and a lot changes for the employees. They changed a lot to to the even more better. So we have a better work-life balance now and all the stuff. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. And what we figured out, since we have different brands in our company. We have WinZip, Parallels Desktop, and Mind Manager, and the Corel Draw family, which is the graphics. There was the initiative that we create a new company name called Aludo. That is the umbrella for all these things. And the good thing is Corel was also included in the CorelDRAW and stuff. So the company name was in one branch of all the stuff, but it wasn't in the others. And so currently it's more clear, and it reflects where we are heading to. So what is this where we are heading to? Eludo is actually a word combination of all you do. So our focus is that we are providing and empower people to work wherever they are. So work is not a place anymore, and all these knowledge workers can work where they want and can use our tools as they like. So it's a transformation to this focus. So when I'm talking about Corel, I'm actually saying Eludo. Everybody needs to get used to to this, including me, but after a while, it's quite fluent. If you have more questions about this, we could make a separate thing about that. So maybe more comprehensive. And so I think we leave this for now. If you have more questions, you can post them later in the box. Okay, so let's come back to the CorelDRAW Technical Suite. First of all, for those who are not really familiar with this package or what it is, just then we warm this a little bit up what it is. So what you see here, the box in green, is actually a CorelDRAW graphics suite, which is created for, let's say, marketing guys who are doing all the stuff and the multicolor pictures and all these things, and advertisements and so on, generic graphics creation. And there you have everything in like CorelDRAW, where you can create your vector graphics, including bitmaps. Here with PhotoPaint, you can work with your photos and stuff, and there's much more included that gives you the ability to work on your graphics work. What we put on top of this graphics suite to make this a technical suite is Corel Designer, which is very familiar to CorelDRAW, but has the ability for technical illustration and all the tools. We see that later. And we have XVA Studio that comes with that. And all these tools together are the technical suite. So it's a graphics suite enhanced with these two tools and solutions to make this a suite that enables you to work with your technical tasks, like using extensively dimensions if you want to show something to your customers in your manuals, or create parallel perspectives, import 3D data, and so on. So the 3D data part is actually where we will have our focus on today, since my experience is that everybody's looking for the low-hanging fruit. In a positive meaning, say, okay, I'm starting with the engineering data. Our servers are full with that, so I'm starting with that, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel, and create my illustrations from that. Okay, so when we're actually talking about technical illustration, that's a real wide field, and there's a lot of stuff that we name technical illustration, and it's not always an exploded view. So there are manuals, maintenance instructions, and all this stuff. Everywhere is graphics, technical marketing and advertising also. Like the shock absorber that we see here, that's a little bit more artistic, and or one-page instructions without text when you order a little tool from Amazon, and they have all these quick intro tools where you see that you have maybe remove a little lid to activate the battery and stuff. This is something where you don't have text, you don't have to translate it, so it's really gorgeous to have just a picture that usually tells you 1,000 words. Then something like escape plans when you're in a hotel. I hope you all have a look on the escape plan when you go in there. So that's actually also a technical illustration. And then we have these specs and standards. As I said, S1000D follows specific rules. That's what I call classic technical illustration where with these thick and thin lines, and all these things in between. And the idea behind the technical suite is that you have one solution package that enables you to create all of those illustrations, no matter if this is this color thing here or just a sign with an arrow on it or whatever. In essence, this means you have the concentration of all this technical communication in one package, and you don't have dozens of different formats where you need an application here, an application there, and so there's one package that gives you everything, and this is where it all comes together. That's our idea behind that. So today the illustration situation is quite different as in the past. So I think we all know that. I'm just having this here to be complete. So in the past, we had technical writers doing all the text, and they went over to the technical illustrator and said, hey, I need one of those fancy illustrations because I want to visualize what I'm writing there. And then they created a combination of an illustration and the text and all the stuff, and that was the deal. So what's today is the situation? Today is these technical illustrators, yeah, unfortunately are fading away, and that led in the direction of the so-called all-rounder, which is actually the technical writer who has to do his illustrations by himself. And we like to give him the toolbox where we enable him to make his life easier. And this is again where it starts with CAD files and engineering data, that it's not to the writer to create parallel perspective and all the stuff from scratch. So it's an easy entry, and it's a good thing. What we see here is a typical illustration with thick and thin lines. We have something which is imported from a CAD system. And what we do now is that we have a first look how this works, and what I call the low-hanging fruit, and how we manage that. So for now, I delete this here, and we can work in the Corel Designer. We can do all these things. We can write our text. There's this toolbox and all the stuff. It's like everything is there what you expect in a graphic solution. So circles, rectangles, and so on. I don't have to tell you that you can draw all these things. This is what you just expect. But what we see later is that Corel Designer has on top all these technical illustration things, where you can say, okay, if I leave the part of the era of just drawing rectangles and flat perspective, and so then you can also switch to parallel perspective, and you don't have any problems without switching the solution. So coming back now to grabbing CAD data is very easy here. You say 3D import, and then the XVL Studio, which was added to this graphic suite, making it the technical suite, is started. And this is your entrance into the 3D world. Here it begins. Usually a majority of our customers, because before they talk to us, tell us that they have a process enabled where they say, okay, they go over to the engineer and say, could you please take your CAD system and turn something like this and this and this, and then export it for me that I can take it from the server and work on it. So that's nice, but it's actually time consuming for the engineer, and he cannot always immediately do that. And after a while, he's probably quite annoyed doing that for you. So the solution would be that you have your own CAD system, which is really overwhelming for somebody dealing with technical documentation. And so here's the solution. This is simple, is powerful, and gives you the ability to grab the CAD data yourself and then you can convert it to your illustrations without annoying the engineer. So if we open a file here, I have one file pre-converted, since sometimes when we import native CAD data, I don't know why, but when we are remote showing this, sometimes it takes longer as expected. So it's pre-converted. Actually, usually you have all these CAD formats here, and it depends what you are working with. So if it's CATIA, then you pick a CATIA file. If it's, let's say, Solid Edge or SolidWorks, then you pick the SolidWorks file, and you can import this. Then it runs, and 1 second later, you have it in your 3D window here. And then afterwards, you can save it in this XVL structured format, which is very small and can be opened very quickly. So there's a good advantage to save this in this intermediate step. Okay, so let's open this file, this 3D file. So here is it, and I worked already a bit with it. For the ones who don't know, this solution is on the left, you see the assembly structure, where that you can use to access the parts, which is very good when you know the names. So you can say, okay, and okay, caliper, here it is. And then you can highlight this in your illustration. You can whirl the stuff around, like just having a look here and say, okay, examining this a little bit. It's just 3D data, and you can make some stuff invisible, visible, and so on. So you can examine and explore your data and figure out what you want to show in your illustration where you have already written the text for. If you want to go back to your initial view, then you can double click the snapshot, which you can create whenever you want. So it's actually when you have different situation you want to write about in your documentation, then you can create all these different snapshots here where you say, okay, this assembly procedure is like this and this and this, and then you can switch in between these snapshots and just move them over. Moving over, how does it look? So let's do what we have seen what was already in the, let's try to see if we can make a better view quality here. So we're doing this, what we have seen in the document already. I have arranged everything like, okay, yeah, I want to see, I want to show this situation here, and I want to move this over to my document in Designer. And there in Designer, I want to add some more things like maybe a hand or a logo and stuff, everything I need to make this a high professional technical illustration. I'm clicking on the button Send to Designer. And here's an options dialog with the shrink to be simple. And you can click some details as well. And here you have a variety of options where you can decide how to move this over. The good thing is, and this is the most interesting part, you can enter your values for the thick and thin lines, and these are later on created automatically in the color you want or whatever, and then you can move this over. If you have the repeating settings that you need, you can also say, okay, I want to have these settings, and then everything is set up as you like it, and that's it. There's a little frame around this where you can enter the frame dimensions. So when you say, later in my document, I have a box of 300 by 200 millimeters, then you can adjust it here and move it over, and then it fits immediately without scaling. So let's do this. It's quite simple. You click off Send, and then all the magic happens in the background. All the color is removed in this scenario here. Thick and thin lines are created, and later on we will see that it's moved over to to Corel Designer, if everything works properly, I hope. And okay, so here we go. The import process is done. You can see our intermediate format is SVG, not the worst. And you can just click or drag a little box, and here we go. So that's in there, and here you can start further working on this, like say we are adding a thread. For that, you can say, you can switch around here. If we go a little bit back, then I can show you, I switch on the grid, and when I draw something, just as a little introduction, here's the magic rectangle. And if I now switch around here like this, then I can switch the designer to parallel perspective, and I'm working on the colored blue arrow here. And when I draw the same rectangle, it automatically fits to the parallel perspective. And the good thing is, when I enter dimensions here, it's not the distorted rectangle where you get the dimensions. It's the true dimensions. When I say I want this to be 40 by 40, then it's really 40 by 40. And this is the same like having this 40 by 40. Okay, I'm doing this as well. So this is 40 by 40 in the flat dimensions, and this is in perspective. So you're working in perspective. You see this while I'm not in the flat perspective. There are different values because I'm not in the same system. Do I switch it around where the system fits? Then I have 40 by 40 again. So there's no, you don't have to sit and calculate what the distorted values are. So Designer switches automatically, and that's the good stuff. So you have a graphics program, and when you need it, you switch to the perspective. Okay, so we are in this perspective now, and if I want, I can add something like a thread. Let's say we're doing it in that way, just that you see the thread. Okay, it's very fine, so we can adjust it here and so on. You can also enter the values and of the length and stuff. But what we want to do now is that we apply it to this thread here. So we're taking the variant of that tool and say we want to go from here to here, and we just move it over. Then it's inside, and there are some ugly lines around that, so we switch them off. And that the users can see this better, we just make this bigger here, that value. And since this is a graphics program and not a CAD system, I can just, with Control D, I duplicate this and put the same here as well. So it snaps there, and that's it. Usually when you convert CAD data, the details like this are missing, and so you can mock this a little bit up, that you can tell the people at home, look at this, that looks like a thread, and this is what you're supposed to find in the accessories box or whatever. So it's not only necessary to tweak the CAD data then to import, it's also very important because you are responsible that your customers understand what you want to tell them. If you're causing a dangerous situation, then you might be in conflict with law or whatever. So every documentation that you provide to your customers need to be watertight in that meaning. So it's not just drawing a picture, it's instruction, technical instruction, where you are held responsible for. But let's stay further with the all-rounder. So let's take, let's switch these things away. I'm scaling that and move it aside. Okay. So as I said, the all-rounder is not really an illustrator. So everything what he can do in this other system to move the stuff over is better for him or her, since it's the so-called low-hanging fruit. And I would appreciate that myself if everything would be nice and easy. So if we're going back to this 3D thing now, we see when we move this over, there is a new snapshot created. This is, in this case, it's the same like this, but when we change something now and we move a new version over, then this is reflected by a new snapshot as well. So let's do that. We just make this piece invisible and we say we just want to have this situation. Looks a little bit ugly, but it's just an example. And I say, okay, now we figured out that the blue background is a little bit, counterproductive to the black lines. So what we're doing now is that we move this over, and I hope it works as I planned this. So we can switch the color of the lines to be white. And since I prepared this here, I just switch to white. And then you see everything switches. So when you're working on different projects and different pages or whatever, you can create settings here and save them for your needs. And when you're working on project B, then you take the illustration settings B, and when it's A, you take the ones of A, and you don't have to change all the stuff. Now you might say, okay, a little bit of color doesn't need a profile, but when we see that there are a lot of options which are very beneficial to you, then you can say, okay, that's maybe helpful if I adjust it once. And then I'm good to go by picking the this profile. So another advantage would be if you're working for S1000D, then you can set up everything, the line weights and the thickness and so on, all on the S1000D spec requirements. And you just say on top, I switch to S1000D, and then boom, everything is good. So we are on the white thing now. So I'm doing the same as before, pressing a button, and that's it. Waiting, having a sip of coffee. I think it's too short for a whole cigarette, but anyways. And then you move the stuff over. Then you can continue working in Designer. This step to Designer is also very beneficial. We see this later. If you put everything in Designer and you use it as a kind of a repository, then it is very beneficial to you, since from there you can go to different other file formats when you want to post this on your website as SVG, or you want to put this in a document. In earlier times it was EPS. I don't know if people still using it, but there are tons of formats, or like PNG. You can export everything out like you want, and it's up to you then, instead of tinkering out around with other tools. Okay, so I just wanted to say, here we see it black on white, but it's white on blue. So much better to see here. And we have a new variant that fits very well. It's still integrated in some kind with the CAD model. So the first thing is, when we go back to the model, and where we see here's your new snapshot without the green caliper. Then we see that here on this item, you see metadata attached. There's a lot of information on it, but the most interesting part that we see here is this, like there's a name, there's a part number and all this stuff, and many other types of information. And if we go to Designer, then we will later on see that this information is still on these elements. Why do we need that? It's totally clear. You don't have to pick it from list or copy and paste or rewrite it. And so this is not, so you don't make any errors or so. I will show you where this is very beneficial. We have a automatic callout tool here in Designer. With that, you can create very fancy callouts. We can set those to object data, which is actually the metadata that comes from the CAD system. And if we click on this caliper, I get offered, let me pull this a little bit bigger, a list with the metadata that we pulled from the CAD system. And I can pick now, say, okay, part number. If I want to include the name field, then I can do this. I switch this off and I say apply. And then I have this number 13 as a call out sticking on my caliper. Can do the same here. Here we have the number 28. And that's in it. And then we go ahead with this. So you don't have to worry what to enter there. Of course, it depends if the data is in the CAD system, but if it's in there, you can leverage it here and then feel free to work with it. And it's very easy. And you have seen there's no fake and nothing. I just imported it and we're good to go. If you now see that something is missing in the CAD file, then you are challenged to add this yourself. And when there is no additional CAD data for a part that is missing here, then you have the ability, and this is where we come back to this grid thing, that you create the stuff yourself. And for this, we have also support for thick and thin lines when you draw something yourself. So if this is necessary that you do that, then you can switch around with your grid settings here. I'm opening a so-called Docker. So we have all the function bundles in so-called Dockers. Can open this projected access Docker, for example, and here we can work with this with these little settings as well. So it's very obvious. And if I click on this blue surface here, then you see that it activates there as well. It's actually redundant, but here we have some additional functionality. And you see, when I click here, it switches as well. And we have a look at this rectangle. So if I want to draw the rectangle as the lid, for example, then I can activate the red surface and draw it there and so on. So the next one is here. And there are also shortcuts I can switch around and so on, but it's just for explanation here. So coming back to our missing part, if I, let's say, there's a little boat or whatever I want to illustrate, then I can create this boat like starting with an ellipse. I have the thick and thin lines automatically. I can switch this off and on. I can say, okay, the depth of this thing shall be, let's say 22. It's good, then I can use the same button twice. And a copy, I send it to back. Let's see, did it work? Okay, little delay, so I created 3. I delete one of those. It's the presenting effect. Thick and thin lines here, I can switch the thick and thin lines. I make this a little bit bigger that you can see that. I can add a tangent, like pull it out like chewing gum, add it here. There's a keyboard combination that I can switch this to be thick. And I can switch this also to be thick. Maybe on the center here, we add a little drill hole, Control D duplicates it. And I say, I want this to be whatever, I just drag it down like that. Switching it around, lined, okay. And here we need to delete something. There's an intelligent delete, virtual segment delete tool. I just touch the superfluous stuff and that's it. Okay, the stuff is illustrated and I make this a group, Control G, and here we go. Now you might say, okay, this is white and this is black and I don't really like this. So the thick and thin lines are stored in so-called, let's see, object styles. I have a lot of object styles here, but the ones we are talking about is the thick line and the thin line. I deactivate this. I select the thick line. And if we don't have any effect here, then I can change it on the central place, and you see it's all actually independent elements. It's just group, but it's independent still. When I change this on the central place, it changes in the whole illustration. And that's the very nice thing. So I can start working on that, and I can even adjust the line thicknesses that they fit. And you see now you have created something without being an engineer for your illustration, and you can work with it right away. And that fills the gap for stuff which is not in CAD. That happens, or maybe there's something in that looks so clunky when you convert it over that you decide you want to recreate this or clean this up. Then you have all the possibilities here. And even if there is something like a plain line that that you want to draw in freehand here because you need it, then it's much easier as creating something like this from CAD, or it's maybe nearly impossible. So this is the process or the era where the CorelDRAW Technical Suite is actually living. So just taking something from CAD and convert it or make a picture of this might not be enough. And having the ability to draw something in perspective might also not be enough. And the combination of both is this what makes this a suite and gives you the ability to fulfill all your tasks. You can see you can also create libraries with bolts, that specific bolts that you have, and incorporate all this stuff and whatever you want. So this is actually the epicenter of your graphics. Okay, so just one thing to show you, one more thing to show you the power of these settings we created. So I move this a little bit over. Let's say there's another thing. If you want to add some color, then you can do this as well. We're just moving this over again. And I enable a setting where I explain to you just right now, white with a fill. What I enabled there is just a safe setting. So you can create outline parts, and when you tell a part before that it shall have color and the color shall survive on the way to Designer, then you just click these three boxes, and then we send this over, and let's see what happens. It's always a surprise as well because we're live. So let's see. Sometimes it's very beneficial to have a drawing in line art, and then you just highlight one part, the part of interest, with a color. Some take red or some take gray, and where you say, okay, this is the caliper, and then you give it context with the illustration lines around it. Okay, so we are entering it here, and it worked. So what you can see, you can grab many information types from the CAD system, and now we have the color in there, and then we can work with this. You can also make this a light gray, that it goes more to the background. Say in the text, then the area of interest is the blue caliper, and please don't put any oil or smear or whatever on it, otherwise it will kill you immediately when you try to use the brakes. And so that shall give you a view on what the abilities are just by converting the stuff from CAD using the right tool and the right options. And this is a very flexible way, and the amount of options you have on top here in Designer, it's nearly endless, and you can create all these illustrations yourself. As an evidence, when you go to the website and go to the technical suite, the vast majority of all illustrations what you see there is really done by me, and this is my, yeah, let's say this is my way to show, okay, I'm advertising for a product where I'm able by myself to create things with that. Okay, so let's minimize these dockers here and go ahead in my, let's switch off the grid, that disturbs. Let's go here. So let's go back to some theory. This is the sweet thought behind this. So what I said initially, having a solution to create a technical illustration is not just drawing a bolt and put a number on it and say this is bolt number 5. There's a lot more stuff like marketing brochures, even sign plotting or engraving when you have products which need to be engraved and stuff. There's also one thing where nobody talks about, which is very interesting, is screenshots of displays and software UI, like you have something like a truck and there's a display in there where you operate a crane on the back, and so then you need to explain to the operators how to use this and what they see in this little display. So this is a matter of screenshots and all the stuff, and you can put all these things with the technical suite tools, with the capture in this case, into these files, and then export it to whatever format you need. So here we placed all the products on these corners of these things, of these tasks. So you see you have a CorelDRAW where you can make some more marketing. You have the designer in the center who can do, I think, 99% of the draw on top the technical illustration stuff. Corel Photo Paint for touching up bitmaps like old scans. So you should never forget, when you're working on something, there's always something. The history is always on the server. It may be 30 years old, a scanned image, and there's a very important customer who says, I need these old images, but touch them up a little bit. Then you have the ability to use these tools and work on the stuff, and you stay in the same solution. There's another tool which is CorelDRAW.app. There's an interesting scenario. So imagine you're creating your technical illustrations, but it's so much that you're working with additional service providers. And this tool enables you that you say, okay, you have an illustration, you upload this in a cloud, then you send a link to your service provider. He can have a look on this illustration, add comments or whatever. And you see in Designer, for example, or in Draw, you see what he's adding there. You can also do it the other way around. The service provider says to you, okay, I have draft number 1 is ready. So have a first look and feel free to add your comments. Then you put everything in, close the lid of your laptop, go home, and he can start working on your recommendations and all these things. So that's quite cool. And that's a very nice use case. So that brings us to the end of this presentation. So we have some minutes left for some additional information. We offer a 30-day trial of CorelDRAW Technical Suite, knowing that you just don't say, okay, then I purchase it, let's see what it does. So you can try everything fully functional. And there's the full XVL Studio 3D CAD Corel Edition import capability with it. One explanation to that: when you purchase the, let's say, standard package, then it has this 3D import capabilities, but you cannot import all the native CAD formats. When you don't have a need for that, then you're good to go. When you want to have this additionally, then there's an optional package that you can purchase with that. You may have a look what you need, and then we can advise you on a one-on-one meeting on that. That's no problem. So 30 days for you, just full-fledged. You can save everything, and when you later on purchase this, you can reuse your files. There's no next and due-dates in this. It's just as you bought it, just for 30 days, and then you're good to go. If you're still hesitant if it fits or not, we know about that. You can make a personal appointment with me, and then we can go through your stuff that you want to achieve. Takes usually an hour, half an hour, and then we can see what you're doing, give you advice, and help you with, let's say, integrating, importing different tasks, object information, which shall be used in electronic spare parts catalogs and all the stuff. And yeah, so all you need is time for both. Okay, time is also expensive, but until you are not very clear what you want to achieve, it doesn't cost you a penny. And so feel free to request at your context more information that fits to your products and to you. Okay, so that's the end, and we complete this with a load of information about import and export formats, and this is freshen up the hub idea behind that. So you can actually create TIFF files, import them. You can read AutoCAD drawings, which is very beneficial when you have DXF, DWG, and all these things, and so on. I think it doesn't make sense to go through all of this, but for those of you who are working in the S1000D industry, like aerospace and defense and such, the computer graphics meta files we create are fully standard compliant. You can open your existing CGM files, export them. You can add object information and all the stuff, and there's absolutely nothing missing in that era. Okay, so thank you, and I hope you got some information that's interesting for you. As I said, if you need further information, contact your local sales guys, and if they need to pull me in, they will contact me anyways, and then we can see how I can support you all. So this is my end, and I hope somebody takes over now. The voice of nowhere comes in and says, "Thank you, Christian, for that."
Thank you, Christian, for that. So that would be my job, right? So we have a couple of quick questions if you have time for them.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So one here is I have my own CAD data and I want it tested by you. Can you do this?
I can do this when you are able to send it to me without any confidentiality or whatever. Then you can send it to me. Can be some stupid test data that doesn't have any meaning but represents what this is technically. Then we can exchange this. Pay attention that it's not too large. That doesn't make sense. A small model, and then I can have a look and give you a little report. What is the good and what is hopefully not the bad.
Good, perfect. And so if anyone's interested in that, they can of course send it to us at AlphaSoft, and we will forward this to Christian and his team. Another question here is, must I purchase the optional XVL Studio add-on for every license of Technical Suite?
Yeah, that's a question that we get sometimes, and I'm glad that it comes up. So imagine you have a bunch of people who want to do illustrating, and then you can purchase the Technical Suite for all of those. And as I said, there's this optional module that enables you to import all this CAD data and stuff on top in the native file format. So that would be then the idea that you say, okay, I purchase 10 technical suites and then I have these 10 add-ons, but I have only 2 guys working with that. So in that case, it's possible that you buy 10 technical suite and just 2 of those modules. So there must not be a match in numbers. So it's a very flexible thing.